Hi, you're welcome to Africa Talks Tech. On today's episode, we've got a very interesting guest on the show with us today, named Rukia Sheikh-Mohamed. And Sam, what are we going to be looking at today?
Today, we're going to be looking at a journey from the legal domain into a full stack software developer. And Rukia shares her inspiration from Kenya through to her other interests and how she found herself moving from one domain to the other and how her journey is going so far. So, without much of ado, sit back, kick back, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Welcome to today's episode of Africa Talks Tech. Today, our guest will be talking to us about our journey from legal domain to becoming a full stack developer. She's going to be sharing tips and advice that can benefit young developers now and many more on today's episode. But first, my name is Kazim Adegwega. I'm an IT professional and I work at the LASU CBT 18 here in Nigeria. And as always, I've got my very good friend and partner on the show with me. Sam, it's over to you.
Oh, hi, Kazim. My name is Sam Erskine. I'm based out of the UK, the head of cloud engagements for a large organization. And on this show, very excited to be talking to a young lady that's been extremely inspirational, having seen some of her work. But we're looking forward to chatting to Rukia. And without much of ado, welcome to the show, Rukia. Do you mind just giving us a little introduction and a brief background as to who you are and how you got here?
Okay, hi, thank you, Sam and Kazim, for having me on your show. My name is Rukia Sheikh-Mohamed. I'm a full stack developer currently working at an awesome startup called Suna in Minneapolis, and we have locations in Denver and Austin. I am in tech for I think this is my fourth year in tech since I made the transition 4 years ago. So a little background about myself. I'm from a non-traditional background. So I didn't have a computer science degree and I didn't go to school to be a software developer, but I did stumble across this field. So it's very interesting how I came. So when I graduated college, I wanted to become a lawyer, but somebody advised me and they said, before you become a lawyer, one thing that you should really do is work in the legal field to see if you like it or not. So I decided to be a paralegal in in an office here in Minnesota, and I realized after some time that I did not want to be a lawyer. And I'm really glad I did before I invested the time and the energy, because I realized that the legal field, as much as it seemed like it was an objective field, it really wasn't, and it was very subjective, and there was a lot of systematic issues. As the world can see, there's so many systematic issues in the United States. So I decided that that wasn't the journey that I wanted to come across. So then I went and I was like, okay, I really wanted to work for a non-governmental organization like the UN or Red Cross or something. And I do have family in Kenya, so I decided to move to Kenya for a little bit. And I wanted to explore and see if I can get a job at the United Nations in Kenya, because they have a lot of offices in Nairobi. So I went there for about like 6 months and I was networking, trying to make connections. And then I remember once I did come across an internship at the United Nations, and it was a software engineer internship. And I realized I didn't know what that was, but I was like, okay, I just need to get my foot in the door. So I'm just going to apply. And then they sent me a coding challenge, and I had no idea what this was, because mind you, I never did anything related to tech. So then I called up a bunch of my friends that were in tech, and I was like, yo, can you help me? And they're like, yes, we'll send you resources. So they sent me like Code Academy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, and other like online resources. So I tried to become an expert in 8 hours, which didn't work out. I didn't get the job, but it did spark something in me, and I was like, okay, I really want to know more about this field. So when I came back to the States, I realized that I didn't want to go to school for another 2 or 4 years to get another degree. So then I stumbled across something called boot camps. And there's a local boot camp in Minnesota called Prime Digital Academy, and I enrolled in that and I did that. And then from there, that's when my journey to tech started. So I did that for about 6 months. And then after I networked and I got an internship at BuzzFeed in Minneapolis as a full stack intern. And then that's where my tech journey started. So it's a really roundabout way. And it's funny that part of my journey started like a huge part of my journey actually started in Africa. So I'm glad to share that with you all.
Wow, that's fantastic, and it's one of the best intros we've had in terms of a journey to where you are. And if I can build on that, you left me with a nice hook about your journey beginning in Africa. This show itself was set up to showcase some of the great things that happen in Africa. So to think that Africa inspired you to become a full stack developer, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, like it's interesting because a lot of I don't know if you all know this, but a lot of Somali diaspora actually go back home, or like they go to Somalia or Kenya, and a lot of the jobs are in Kenya, but you work for Somalia. So that was kind of my journey. Like I wanted to do that, and I stumbled across tech. So yeah.
Excellent. So in your opinion, I know 8 hours isn't the answer, so you can't use that one, right? How long did it take you to transition into this space if you were to aggregate the time? So you didn't go back to college to study, but your boot camps, etc. So how long would you say it took you to be in a position where at least you could land the internship?
Okay, so for me, I would say it started, my boot camp did start in November, the end of 2016. So the end of November all the way until June was when I first got my first job in tech. So I would say about 8 months. And as you all know, I'm still constantly learning. So it's still a learning. That's why I really like tech. Like it's not a static field. It's dynamic. It's always changing and you always have to learn. But it did take me, I would say, about 8 months to get my first job from starting my journey.
Excellent.
Okay, so you've mentioned that you've transitioned now from the Lego field now to becoming a seasoned developer. I'm sure you must have been very disciplined with how you spend your time in order for you to have been able to achieve that. So my question is, what advice would you give to young developers on how they can maximize their time to really be very productive?
That's a really good question because I'm still trying to be as productive as possible right now. I think one thing is definitely make a schedule for yourself. And because a lot of these things is, they teach you certain like coding boot camps in schools, they teach you certain things, but there's a lot of things that you have to do on your own on the side. So I would definitely say you need to have a schedule for yourself. So be like, maybe I will not go 3 days without writing some type of code or studying this JavaScript framework or studying this Ruby on Rails querying or something. So like telling yourself at least every 3 days I need to write code. Or a lot of side projects helped me a lot, help solidify my skills. So like it's not side projects as like having your own business, having your own just really just coding for fun, like creating your own portfolio, creating a website for fun, creating a website for like a relative or a friend. So really just muscle memory. And then another thing I would say really helped me is teaching other people. So like another way to learn your current skills is to teach it to someone else. So like I did have a lot of friends that I like nudged into doing software as well. So then when they were in boot camps, I would help them with their coding exercises and stuff like that. So those are the two main things I would say helps.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question is around career paths for a developer, right? I mean, with programming, there's just so much to learn, right? So how does a newbie to programming know what exactly to learn? How do they know what career paths within the software development domain to follow?
That's a good question. I would say for me, so I worked at 4 different companies so far, and I've been in tech for 4 years. So one of them was an internship and one of them was like a small part-time job, but it really depends. Like when you learn coding, the job that you work at doesn't necessarily ask you to use the language you learned. You're gonna, every job I've ever worked at always asked me to learn a different language. But the good thing is if you know one language, it solidifies the foundation for you to easily pick up another language. And another interesting thing I thought about for this question is I actually thought that I wanted to be like a software developer slash project manager. And I tried that for a little bit, like I did in my old company where like we didn't have a project manager. So I told my boss, hey, I can pick up the tasks for it. But then I realized that, you know, I actually don't want to do that because I wanted to hone in my skills in technically, not like project management is more like, you know, you got to manage the project. So I would say try, you know, I had to try it to see if I didn't like it, you know, so try things out, see if you're in a team that, you know, is opening to have different opportunities. Like, you know, you guys don't have a designer, so maybe you can design some stuff for you. Maybe you guys don't have a project manager, maybe you can do a project. But I'd be very wary about that too, because sometimes you're going to pick up work and not get paid for it. It's not worth it. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful about that.
I completely understand. And it resonates with me because I did a little bit of a reverse of what you did. So in college or university, I did microelectronics and computing. So it's a balance between electrical and programming. And I thought I wanted to become a programmer. And for my first few interviews, once I started looking into, I realized actually I didn't enjoy programming at all. I liked real-time systems, right? And actually switched completely to field service engineering, which is hardware engineering, going and fixing printers and computers initially. And I came across somebody that was an what we call RAF engineer, so the Royal Air Force in the UK. And he was my first mentor. And that leads me to the question I wanted to ask, because all too often, and you know, I felt a bit like an imposter because I was like, oh, never really opened a PC before. I've seen some of the sessions you've done, and you talked a lot about mentoring, and you've also mentioned about teaching. So how did that help you, and what recommendations do you have around this when it comes to leveraging mentors, knowing how to be one, and getting some benefit out of it? What are your thoughts on that, and how would you advise others on this, in your opinion?
Sam, that's really interesting because I'm really big on mentorship. And one of the people, a few of the people that really helped me be successful in tech are my mentors. I would attribute that to them because one thing that I learned really fast growing up is it's better for you not to make your own mistakes, but learn from other people's mistakes. And something that mentoring really helps you do is for people who are like me, who are newbies in tech, like finding other newbies in tech who are more seasoned than me. So like being able to be like, hey, can you give me advice on everything tech related, whether it is do with coding and how to get better technically, or has to do with salary negotiations, or has to do with career development. So I really find it super helpful to have a mentor that does that for you, that can speak to their experience and their wisdom and be like, hey, I already went through this. Let me give you the blueprint that I went through, because it saves you a lot of time and it also gives you that bond. Because sometimes in tech, like being the only, like there's not a lot of Black women in tech. So like all my mentors that I've ever had were Black women, because I wanted to also have somebody that has the same experiences as me that can let me know how they navigated the system. So, and then once I was actually a mentor for my school does mentorship, so I did do that for a while, and it was really nice helping people, because then you get to realize that, oh, that used to be me a few months ago or a few years ago, and it really humbles you and really brings you back on how to better explain concepts to people that don't necessarily know the terms. I hope I answered your question.
And a whole lot more. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. The next question for me is personally for me now, sometimes I just wish I could go back and give an advice to my younger self. You know, maybe there are a few things I would have loved to do a little differently. I'm not sure if this applies to everybody now. But could you please share some of the things you wish you knew before becoming a software engineer, and perhaps some tips that new developers can embrace to achieve success in software development?
Okay, this is a really good question. I remember I was thinking about this for a while. So one thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions when you're stuck. Like, don't stay stuck too long. That's one of the biggest advice I would tell myself. Like, don't feel like, oh, I'm going to sound stupid asking this really small syntax question or something. Just ask it, because the sooner you ask the question, the sooner you'll get unstuck, and then you can move forward. Then you probably won't get stuck on that question. Another thing is, don't fake it till you make it. Don't try to, I know some people say fake it till you make it in certain things, but when you're working technically code, don't try to fake it till you make it, because then you're just gonna do a disservice to yourself. Like, your future self will not thank you for faking it till you make it. So just try to, if you don't know something, be honest with yourself, and don't try to be like, I can just hack it through, or I can find a bunch of code online that will necessarily answer my question for you. But if you don't understand what you're answering, then you don't really know what you're doing. You're just copying things down. So that's another big advice I would tell myself. And then it also segues into the last one, where, like, if you copy code from the, like, Stack Overflow or Google, make sure you understand it, because even though there's 10 different ways to answer a question, but if you don't understand how you got to that answer, somebody's going to ask you, Ruqayya, why did you answer it this way? And if you just be like, I just copied it, then that doesn't necessarily, you didn't really solve it by yourself. You don't even know what it's doing. It's fine to copy code, but as long as you know what it's doing, if you can get to it. So those are the three main things I would say. And then from a more non-technical standpoint, just be honest with yourself of, like, how, like, where do you see yourself, like, in every, like, just reevaluate your goals every few years. If you want to be a director of engineering in the next 5 years, find ways for you to get there. If you want to be like a principal engineer in every 5 years, the next 5 years, find a way for you to get there. So just reevaluate your goals every now and then as well.
That's fantastic. And I watched your Working Smarter, 5 Ways to Getting Unstuck.
Yeah.
And what resonated with me and even helped me was you mentioned about asking intelligent questions when you're in a search engine. And I've got to say that I've seen a lot of coders, seasoned coders, do demos and presentations. And I'm like, well, that's just a whole lot of stuff on a dark background. What you did there was amazing, and you lived what you've just been talking about, because you broke down how to use those 5 steps. So I was just going to say that, that's what I would love to tell my younger self, because it
Yeah.
took me a while to acquire the skill of simplicity. So, we would definitely be referring people to that guidance that you've given. And Kazim, I believe we've learned a great deal from this, and you've been an absolute amazing guest. But I don't know, Kazim, do you have any closing words? Apart from we need her back for parts 2.
I think we should leave the closing words for Rukia now to help us close out. If there's any last words from you that you'd like to share before we say bye-bye.
Okay, I don't know. I really appreciate you taking my words, because sometimes I just talk. I don't know if I'm benefiting. I don't benefiting anyone out there. But one thing I would say is, don't be afraid to get into this industry. And if you are in this industry, don't be afraid to stay in it, because there is a place for you, and you do have skills that is much needed, not from just technically, but also non-technical skills. And I feel like a lot of us have this imposter syndrome that we battle sometimes, because of a lot of outside forces, but also inside forces within ourselves, and just believing that, like, I always say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Honestly, that's like my motto of being in tech. So that's what I would close with.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. So that's how much we've got time for on today's episode of Africa Talks Tech. So we hope you really enjoyed this episode. So if you have, so please do give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. It's Africa Talks Tech on YouTube. And so from myself now, and from Rukia, and from Sam, it's bye-bye from us now.
Thank you. And it's bye from myself as well. And thank you very much, Rukia.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
Yes.